going on, friends? Hipster Punchy here. Got another video going on. I was actually originally going to be in Blairstown filming my next video for this channel for Friday the 13th because I am from Jersey and I'm a car ride away from the area where the first film was actually filmed. And I figured that would have been a nice little treat for the 40th anniversary, but because of the coronavirus, plans had to change, like has been happening with everyone. I mean, if sports leagues are going to close, I can shift plans. I can easily do another video. Just stay safe. Please stay safe. Don't be stupid. But I wanted to do something to celebrate the fact that it is Friday the 13th, and why not do a list of 13 things you might or might not know about Friday the 13th? So here are some Friday the 13th facts here for Friday the 13th. And then hopefully in November, I'll be able to shoot the video I wanted to shoot today. All right, I've got my Camp Crystal Lake Counselor shirt on. Let's do this. For number one, I'm going to go with the obvious one, which is the fact that the killer in part one is actually not Jason. I know we've seen Drew Barrymore get that question wrong in the beginning part of Scream, and honestly, a lot of people assume that Jason is the killer in the first one because Jason has become so synonymous with this series, but it's actually Jason's mother, Pamela Voorhees, who's the killer in part one. She is motivated by the death of her son, at least the presumed death of her son, based on the fact that Jason in parts 2 through 4 is very much a living human at that point, so which is something I'll get into shortly, but no, it was actually Pamela Voorhees on a revenge mission from the get-go. Number 2 on this list, something you might not know because of the time gap between filming of each one. Parts 2, 3, and 4 all take place in consecutive days, whereas there's a 5-year time gap between 1 and 2, 24 hours between sequels up until the end of part 4. Which makes sense. I mean, they're shot in consecutive years, so you could definitely make that justification that they're in consecutive days. I mean, it's not long enough between movies for styles to change, so it was very easy to pull off. It is a little weird from part 1 and 2, though, because they're about a year apart or so, but it's supposed to have been 5 years passing by, which I think is a... The series does weird things with time. I don't know how to explain it other than they don't regard continuity in terms of what year a previous film was supposed to be, except for 2 through 4. So, moving on. Part 8, or Jason Takes Manhattan, or as I like to call it, Jason on a Freaking Boat, actually was supposed to be primarily in Manhattan. The problem is budget cuts forced them to only be able to have 2 days to film in New York City, so they kind of chose their locations wisely. For example, they decided to spend a day in Times Square because that's a famous landmark in the area, which had some fun with Kane Hodder's Jason, but that was the decision they made. Scenes that were cut from the script because of these budgetary restraints were the Julius Jason boxing match happening in Madison Square Garden, which I think would have been an even cooler shot and would have probably given them the ability to do a little more cinematography-wise. Maybe they could have made it like a Rocky match, the way they would portray boxing matches in Rocky. That's something they could have done. There was also supposed to be a scene of Jason on the Brooklyn Bridge, which, let's be honest, they should have just pulled a Lucio Fulci and just done it guerrilla style. Although I feel like doing a Jason movie on the Brooklyn Bridge would have probably not been good for doing that, so I guess good call. Makers of Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason on a Freaking Boat. Number 4. Parts 4, 5, and 6 are effectively a trilogy as well, which is funny. 4 is kind of the end of one trilogy and the beginning of another. This is the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, with Tommy being the main character in all 3 films. He is the only character to do so, and it's actually a really good progression in the series, which at various points they had wanted to make him be the replacement killer for Jason, which explains why they did the final chapter in 4. They wanted to have Tommy be the killer at various points, and they kind of didn't pull the trigger. One other note about this trilogy, even though it is the Tommy trilogy and you can have them line up, Tom McLaughlin actually retconned Part 5, so it's really more so a trilogy in spirit. Number 5. Part 2 and Part 3 were actually supposed to have the main character be the final girl from the previous film. Alice from Part 1 was supposed to return in a larger role for Part 2, which she declined to do so because she had a stalker based on Part 1. And Part 3, Ginny was supposed to return and she was supposed to be the lead. The whole theme being that she trained up in self-defense because of her time against Jason, and she goes back to college. She's prompted to return to Crystal Lake to face off against Jason when Paul's body is dumped into her dorm room. I think that would have been a very interesting take. They could have definitely done some of the low-key PTSD stuff that they did with Chris in Part 3, but it made them change gears for a movie that is iconic mostly for Jason getting the hockey mask. Number 6, just to show you what Cunningham was trying to do here, he actually took out an ad for Friday the 13th before the script was actually finished. This was because he wanted to build hype for the movie and because he was trying to cash in on the holiday-themed slasher movie craze that was kind of started with Black Christmas, but really hit high gear with Halloween. So once Halloween came out and was a success, he bought ad space in Variety and put the Friday the 13th poster there, and the rest is history. Number 7, we are more than halfway through this list. Rob in Part 4, the final chapter, is actually the brother of Sandra in Part 2. Sandra is the female who is part of the spear kill in Part 2 with the guy who always had the AC/DC hat on, the Angus Young hat. And so that's his sister. And they make it it's funny, like I mentioned with the time frame in the movies, they make it seem like Part 2 was much further than 2 days before Part 4, even though it was definitely 2 days before Part 4, because Part 4 begins where Part 3 left off, and Part 3 begins where Part 2 left off. But regardless, they're siblings. Number 8, Freddy vs. Jason. This movie was actually supposed to happen in 1987. Paramount and New Line, because Paramount at the time had the rights to Jason, both sides could not agree to a script that would make both characters look good. So nothing happened with that. What we got instead on the Jason end was Jason Takes Manhattan, which kind of sucks compared to what could have been, but still a fun, campy movie that I have on in the background right now as I'm filming this. So we've got that. And then they tried it again to develop it at least once New Line got the rights to Jason. But we initially ended up getting Jason Goes to Hell, which was and New Nightmare, which was really good. So we kind of halfway got something good out of that. And then they were still trying to develop it even after those two movies. And what ended up happening was, to keep Jason fresh in our minds, we got Jason X, which I used to hate that movie, but it's I kind of like it for the same reasons I like a Troma film. So, like, I know it's not good, but it's fun bad, which I think you have to have those in your life. I know I'm Mr. like cinephile, I love my art house films, but sometimes you need good bad to cleanse the palate a little bit, or to like give yourself a break. Number 9, Tommy Jarvis. Like I said, the one character to appear in multiple films. He's actually played by 3 different actors in this one. In Part 4, he's Corey Feldman, who just released a documentary. If you didn't see the stream, it was okay. Part 5, he was played by John Shepherd, and in Part 6, he was played by Return of the Living Dead veteran Thom Mathews. Corey Feldman couldn't continue his role as Tommy Jarvis for Part 5 because he actually was filming The Goonies at the time, and he was able to allow it so that he could come back to film that opening sequence of the dream that a kind of adult Tommy had to begin the movie. John Shepherd, on the other hand, was offered the role, and he had the ability to do it. He opted not to, citing his belief as far as being an evangelical Christian. In Part 5, he actually was not aware that it was a Jason movie until they were filming, and he kind of was not happy with that fact. Another reason was he had taken another project before leaving acting altogether to do church work. So that opens the door for Thom Mathews in Part 6, who I think is the definitive Tommy. The personality, some of the one-liners he had there, I think he perfected the role. And that's why whenever they talk about bringing Tommy back in a movie, my thought is Thom Mathews, even though Corey Feldman's the original, I think Thom Mathews is the best Tommy. Number 10. That's 5, 10. 10. This series has actually had some notable first-time appearances or early appearances from a lot of actors. You have Kevin Bacon, who was in Part 1. It had probably one of the best kills of the movie as well. You had Crispin Glover, and you also had Corey Feldman in Part 4. You had Kelly Hu in Jason Takes Manhattan, and there was actually, weirdly enough, an early appearance by Evangeline Lilly in Freddy vs. Jason. In addition, David Cronenberg has made an appearance in the films as well. Number 11. Betsy Palmer actually only took this gig because of the fact that she had to get a car that was $10,000, and that's actually exactly what this role was going to pay her. So it was something to the effect of she got a Volkswagen car, or at least a Volkswagen hatchback, which her daughter said looked like it could have been a cute car. She opted to go for that, and she thought the role or the movie was complete S, but she took it because she was making $1,000 a day for a 10-day shoot, which covered the $10,000 car. Again, the rest is history. I'm also glad that later in life she ended up embracing the role and embracing the series, especially with people taking pictures of her holding their kid, because to horror fans, she is the ultimate mother character. Number 12, the most famous scene of the franchise and of the first film, Jason popping out of the water, that was not originally in the script. I know that's mentioned, but who actually is the reason that scene happened is something that's not really widely discussed or known. That was Tom Savini's idea. He decided to get that last little scare because the original script ended with Alice just drifting off in the canoe. But he knew that you need that last little scare in a movie like that, so he inserted the Jason comes out of the water jump scare, and the rest is history. Number 13, we're at the end of this list, but here we go. They actually were developing multiple ideas for sequels to Freddy vs. Jason. The one that got the most ground, though, was actually Freddy vs. Jason versus Ash from the Evil Dead series, and it automatically had people's antennas buzzing. You'll remember that the Book of the Dead was actually in Jason Goes to Hell. Then the Evil Dead style version of it, too. It was definitely the Necronomicon from those films. So that was in there, plus obviously Freddy and Jason had crossed over before because Freddy vs. Jason, and let's be honest, who doesn't want to see Freddy and Ash trading quips? Both are known for their comedic timing when it comes to quotes, and that was a fan's dream. But alas, New Line could not get the rights for Ash, and so they decided to shelve the project. I remember the outline of the movie coming out and it looking spectacular. I mean, I was picturing the scene where Jason was chasing Ash through the S-Mart, and I wanted more of it. Fortunately, though, what we did wind up getting a comic book series version based on that outline. So even though it does not exist in cinematic form, you can find it in comic book form, and if you do have the ability to, I would say check it out, and check out the follow-up to that, which actually involves Ash teaming up with survivors from all the movies from Friday the 13th and Freddy vs. Jason, with the exception of the survivors of Freddy vs. Jason, as they're killed early in the story for Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, both in the treatment and in the comic. And that has been my 13 facts about the Friday the 13th franchise. I'm going to get this up, posted today. During the weekend, I'm actually going to do my Criterion flash sale haul video, so that's going to get posted. And then my next review is going to be the Arrow Ring Trilogy box set. So can't wait to see you guys next week. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring that bell. Also, follow me on the social medias at HipsterPunchy on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Yes, I know I need to update my Letterboxd. I know I'm going to. I'm going to be indoors a lot because of the coronavirus, so that's what I can do. Alright guys, be safe. I'll see you guys in the next video.